Hello, this is the third and final video in my little series about my broader reading tastes. These are some of my unpopular opinions as a reader, but to be honest, I'm not really sure how unpopular they are because I don't know everybody's opinions, so I haven't got any data to go off. So firstly is that I kind of love what I call a DNF spurt, where like you finished a book and you're trying to find another book to read, and you go through like 4 or 5 books at once and you start them and you DNF them like within 20-30 pages because it's not for you, and you do that like 4 or 5 times. And I don't know, there's something satisfying about marking off like a bunch of books off my TBR with kind of no effort, because like I didn't read the book, I just know like, oh, that's not for me, can mark it off my TBR, don't have to worry about it anymore. Now, obviously, like, I'm a reader. I what I most want is to find a book that I'm really into and I am enjoying. And if these DNF spurts turn into a bit of a DNF saga and it takes too long to find a book I'm into, well, that's just frustrating. But for a little bit of a DNF spurt, I don't know. I think it's kind of satisfying. Next is that book series just cannot win with me, and I fully know that this is a me thing, because either I pick up the first book in a series and I dislike it, either I just don't really enjoy where the story is going, or I find the ending unsatisfying and it just kind of feels like an advertisement for the second book. I hate that, and it really puts me off a book series. Or I pick it up and I really like it, and I think it's great. I really enjoy the characters and the story, and it has a satisfying ending, and I feel really good. Like this happened recently with Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. I thought that book was great, and I didn't feel the need to read anymore. It's such a catch-22. Either I'm left feeling satisfied and I am perfectly happy not to continue, or I'm not left feeling satisfied and I'm like, well, I'm not going to continue a series that can't even satisfy me with one book, At least right now, I just cannot get into series at all, and I actually think there's a big reason why I've kind of steered away from fantasies, because a lot of fantasy is series right now. Next is that I think YA, young adult, is a genre. I don't really know how controversial this is, but I have heard people say, like, don't talk about YA as if it's a genre. It's an age range. And yes, it is an age range, but I also think it's a genre. It's a very broad genre and it can overlap with other types of genres, but it has its own tropes and trends and writing styles. And I think that there are other genres that are definitely considered genres that are just as broad in content and style, but still have commonality, enough to be considered a genre. And I think that YA is the same. There are conventions in storylines and writing trends and character arcs, etc., even across different subgenres. And also I think the fact that there are so many people who read YA who fall outside that age range, indicates that there's something on offer here that isn't just age range related. Next is that Deathly Hallows is the worst Harry Potter book. For me, Harry Potter is all about Hogwarts. It's about Hogwarts student life and taking classes and learning magic and then interweaving that with the mystery, and often, Hogwarts itself plays a role in uncovering that mystery, and Hogwarts is the character of Harry Potter for me, and it's missing in half of Deathly Hallows. There is no student life, there is no mystery revolved around Hogwarts. Yes, there is that, the ending battle, but like I said in my dislikes video, I'm not that into battles, so it didn't really do much for me. I mean, spoiler alert here, but I kind of find Harry's non-death really underwhelming for me. I also think that the epilogue is just total rubbish, and I thought that in 2007 as well. It just felt so pandering. And of course, it's Harry Potter. There were, of course, things that I did enjoy. Dobby. I loved the camping, actually. I actually really enjoyed the camping scenes. That there's that, monotonous day-to-day living that I talked about in my What I Love video, I loved the underground radio. That was a great addition. But overall, you know, everything that I really love in Harry Potter was missing from this book, and my least favorite parts of the series are all in this book. So it's definitely my least favorite. Next is honestly more a pet peeve than anything, but it really annoys me when people say that, like, you can't spoil a book that's really old. You know, they'll be like, oh, you know, like, can you really spoil a book published 150 years ago or something snarky like that, you know? But guess what? Like, people were born sooner than that, right? Like, just because it's been out for a century or whatever doesn't mean that someone who's, you know, 22 years old has gotten around to it yet, you know? What perplexes me about this is that people know this, right? Like, people aren't dumb. They know that people are younger than books, and yet so many people make this joke as some sort of excuse for not abiding by proper spoiler etiquette when it comes to, like, older works. You know, I had Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier spoiled for me on a book podcast completely out of nowhere. Like, this wasn't a podcast about Rebecca, it was just out of the blue, and then it was passed off as this joke afterwards, like, ha ha ha, you've had 80 years to read it. And it's like, no, I haven't had 80 years to read it. I've not even been alive that long yet. Next is, I guess, another sort of pet peeve. I don't know, but it's changing the format of a paperback for seemingly no reason. Like, obviously everyone hates those stickers, especially those, like, non-removable emblems that are, like, integrated into the cover. They're really annoying. Everyone hates them. But I also dislike deckled edges, but I don't dislike deckled edges for the reason everyone else does. I agree with the other people that dislike them, that, you know, they make it harder to turn the pages and stuff like that. But also, I just hate the look of them. I don't think they give the look that they're trying to give. They're trying to give off this very, like, rustic kind of oldie-timey vibe, or like a very fancy vibe. But I don't think they do that, because if you look at deckled edges, they are very mechanically done. They often look really ordered and like symmetrical and like a pattern, and you can almost see the shape of the blade that cut them. So what is intending to give this very, like, humanistic, like, handcrafted kind of vibe actually just comes across as really mechanical to me, even more so than just, like, a straight cut blade. But most of all, I absolutely hate when paperbacks have those front covers that have a little bit of the front cover cut off on the right hand side. I think this is called a step back, but I'm not entirely sure. This irritates me so much. Most of the time it's really ugly. It just has some, like, annoying quote on the little bit that you can see. It's like you're just cutting off more of the beautiful cover and you're making it harder to read. I feel like, I don't know if this is just in my mind, but I feel like more at risk of paper cuts when I hold books like this, and I absolutely refuse to buy one. And last but not least is something that it's not really an unpopular opinion, and it's not really a pet peeve either. It's just more an observation that I often like British covers for American authors. For example, I prefer the British cover for A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, who's an American author. And I prefer American covers for British authors. For example, I prefer the American cover for Into the Water by Paula Hawkins, who's a British author. Now, obviously, these are just two examples, and I'm not really sure if this is just a case of confirmation bias, right? Like, you know, when I started noticing this, am I now just only noticing when, like, I prefer British covers of American authors and vice versa, right? I don't know. I haven't really been tracking my cover preferences that intensely. It's just something that I've, like, vaguely noticed. So that is it. They are my unpopular bookish opinions. Again, I don't really know how unpopular they are. I have no read on these things. Pun intended. No.